The only thing that is certain for next year, by the way, the recording of this is the last day of 2024, so Happy New Year if you're in the future in 2025. ASL also recently rebranded as SSL, assuming they keep that name, SSL. The biggest StarCraft 1 Star League that there is will be renewed, presumably for 2 seasons. I don't think it will ever be 1 season or 3 seasons, but we'll see if they change that. But regardless, we know there's going to be another season. This will probably be somewhere at the end of Q1, start of Q4 for next year. I don't have the dates yet. As soon as I know them, I will announce them. And if you want to fly out here and watch some StarCraft 1 live, you are welcome to. They have a couple new maps that are candidates. So these are not official yet. And we're going to take a quick look at them. And I'm going to give you guys my thoughts. So the first one is Death Valley. This is kind of, how do I say this? It's always good that there are experimental maps. And I would put this in the experimental map category. It is technically an island map. In the early days, they had full-on island maps. Like you're in a body of water, and there are several little islands sprinkled throughout that. And you're kind of island hopping and dropping. And they eventually got rid of them because the way StarCraft operates, like, for instance, Zerg just needs more bases than Protoss, right, in order for it to be fair. So Zerg were at a fundamental disadvantage, assuming you had one expansion on each island. The problem is if you have 2 bases on an island, or 2 or 3 expansions on an island, like we saw with Sparkle, then Zerg got too strong. So this is, we often call it a semi-island map. So you are marooned in this location here. You can see the top left. By the way, two-player map, other spawn in the bottom right. You are stuck in this location, but there are eggs on one ramp, and then there are 2 assimilators on the other ramp. And while let me explain actually the idea with this. So the eggs, they're high armor, just like any other Zerg egg in the game, but they can be destroyed. So certain units like DTs can do a lot of damage due to their damage type. Carve through that, and then you get an exit. The other location over here has 2 neutral Protoss assimilators. If you destroy these... oh, no, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm reversing this in my head. You can move in and out of these, but if they are destroyed, then it is closed off. So this is not a full-on island map, but it has the option of becoming an island. So this makes for some interesting ideas. So you do have an exit over here at the entrance. Sorry, I got a little... for a second, I was thinking... I reversed what the assimilators could do. This is like a weird thing on this map. By the way, my take on this is I'm okay with it, but I wish they made something that wasn't just like a building, like something that... you'd have to have so much nuance about the game to understand. I wish there was like something you could destroy that would just like open up a bridge with some kind of visual effect. I don't know if we're ever going to get that in StarCraft 1. But yeah, you have to know a lot about the game to even at a glance understand this stuff. But you have one main exit over here. And then, of course, there's this backdoor exit. So this is going to make for some interesting games. Let's say that you could, like, PvZ, obviously Protoss probably going to be expanding over here at the top, but Zerg could be trying to make lings and carve their way through over here. You like the old map Estrella back in the day? Estrella was a good map. There were problems with that, though, just having to get off the island. Back when they made the map Estrella, the big difference they made was that you start on an island, but everything else is connected by land. If you remember, Neo Hall of Valhalla was another one I played a bunch of games on back in the day. This should be a fun map, though. I think it's going to be a challenge. I think we're going to see certain matchups where if this map is accepted, players are going to default ban it. But I think it's a welcome addition. I think it's a complicated map. By the way, generally speaking, the most of the ASL maps or SSL maps are put into the ladder. So for a lot of players, this is probably going to be a map that you will be banning if you're not a high-level player, just because of the other challenges that come with trying to learn it. Anyways, that's going to be the first map, Death Valley. Very cool addition. By the way, not too experimental. I think we had a period. I think we can all kind of go back to Sparkle, but there were a road. I think was it Roadkill. There were a couple other maps that were just maybe too many crazy ideas, where I felt like some of the map makers kind of lost their way. I think it's always great to bring in a couple new ideas, but not vomit out 10 or 12 crazy ideas at once. Even if it makes for some wild games, I think StarCraft 1 is has aged so well, and it's so clear it's going to age well into the future that we can take our time with kind of crazy-looking maps. Map number 2, Metropolis. So this is a 4-player map, unlike our previous 2-player map. When I look at this map, the first thing I notice is that the main base is massive. You have this boomerang-shaped base where on both sides it feels like you could drop stuff off there, or you could hide things there in your enemy's base. It is small and narrow in the kind of starting location. So if you were to follow my mouse cursor over here, you couldn't go inside the ramp and I think sneak all the way around this and let's say make gateways over here. But we'll see. I haven't actually played on it just yet. Another thing about the map is that in the middle, and I don't think I've seen this on a map unless I'm not remembering right, but obviously middle bases are very common on 4-player maps. This is one where it's just 1 gas and 2 patches of minerals. Now, I don't know the mineral sets on each of these maps. This just came out recently. So I'm not sure how mineral rich or gas rich the center location is, or if we'll ever even see anybody expand there because the minerals are so sparse. Generally on 4-player maps, the reason why they put a base in the middle is that it's in some matchups it's pretty common. Are the minerals stacked? Shadows are stronger? You might be right. I don't know for sure. When I loaded this up, I hadn't even thought of something like that, but you could be right, WorldFire. What was I saying? Oh, the reason why they put a base in the middle of the map is that on 4-player maps, a lot of times the map can get cut in half, depending on the matchup. So, kind of funny to see such a tiny base put over there, assuming it's stacked like that. Also, the 12, 6, 9, 3 bases are pretty bulky. Not necessarily just in the size that where you can build, but they have these sort of built-out features here. Seems like you could drop something in these little pockets over here, if I'm looking at this correctly. So I don't know what that means for certain matchups, but let's say you put a siege tank in there, you could certainly shell the expansion. And also, it seems like the middle of the map is actually pretty small. So this reminds me a little bit of Retro. Anyways, I think it's a welcome map. It may actually be more challenging for new players to play on than it initially looks. We've had a couple maps that have come out, Retro being one of them, where Artosis and me have talked about this on casts, but we've also talked about it a lot when we're not being recorded about just how hard some of these maps are to try to pick up. Okay, next map is Polestar. So Polestar, this is a map that is 4-player. You do have eggs at your ramp, and you go from high ground onto low ground, back onto high ground. And this has been, I think Deja Vu is a good example of this. This has been a more common on a couple maps. I think this is a better adjustment for the high ground to low ground to high ground map, because in Deja Vu, I find that, at least in PvZ, it's really hard to stop a lurker contain because you don't have a lot of room to get out. On this map, there's a lot of exits. You have 2 extremely large exits. If we're taking this from the top left perspective, over here on the right is massive. On the bottom, it's massive. But there's even a tiny third base location you can squeeze out to. So I think this is a pretty welcome addition. Let me see if I can zoom in. Oops. I'm trying to... It won't let me zoom in that far. Sorry. In the middle, I think there are some patches. But it looks like the patches are so small, it's almost like insignificant as far as like, would you want to expand there and take that? So the middle might not play as much of a role, but we do have these rolling hills. It looks like each spawn gets about 4 bases. And after that, you're basically bleeding into one of the other spawns. This map might be my favorite so far, just for me. Like, as a player, I'm like, okay, I think I could play on this map. And I think in the last maybe 3 seasons of ASL, I think they did a really good job of not being too wacky and dumping just crazy maps out there. We need some crazy maps, but we also need just kind of good bread and butter, a little bit formulaic maps with a couple interesting ideas, and I think this is one of them. So I think this is a pretty cool map. And then they had the old maps with changes. So I was looking at this before I started the stream. This is Dominator redone. I don't know what they changed. I think just maybe some stuff in the middle. They cleaned it up a little bit and made the walls a little bit more narrow. I will say on this map, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell what's going on in the center unless you have like overlords or something that can really see over everything. But Dominator is a good map. I've really enjoyed playing on it. I think it does offer some unique challenges. I think the amount of rolling hills you have here make it interesting for pushing out into the middle of the map, like TVP, TVZ, PVZ. Even in my own experience of PvP, I find it's kind of an interesting format of a map because high ground, low ground really impacts the way fights go in StarCraft 1. StarCraft 2, obviously, it has an impact, but, you know, if you can see up onto the high ground, you can fight, and so it basically becomes the same. Where here, you have to make a calculated decision if you're going to fight from low ground onto high ground. So, cool to see Dominator staying in the map pool. This is a map, by the way, that is this idea has been worked out for years. Originally, it was Gladiator. They've kind of, I think, we call this kind of like, I saw somebody in the chat say this a second ago, this kind of pizza slice map. They've been messing around with this type of map for a while. I think it's done really well. I also like, by the way, a map where we have one low ground onto high ground map. In certain matchups, I think that makes it a lot more interesting. And especially for me, as like someone who's been laddering a bunch, PvP, I think, is really... you have to change the whole way you approach the matchup from low ground to high ground. So I think this is a welcome addition. I also hope we always... I know that we're talking about SSL, but just because these maps trickle down into the ladder, I hope that these maps... I hope that we always have a low ground to high ground map, a high ground to low ground map, and then a map where it's flat. Because that makes a lot of the early game for each of the matchups very different. And I think if you're going to be a player who's trying to learn the game, you don't want to be stuck in a map season ever where you don't have, like, you know, all 3 of those maps. So, anyways, welcome addition there with Dominator. Deja Vu has had a change here. And I'm going to be honest with you guys, when I look at the middle of this map here, you know when you, like, you look at a picture and you can see 2 different things? I can't tell if this is more high ground or more low ground in the center. Deja Vu is a map I personally don't play because I find PvZ to be so punishing. Specifically, if you could follow my cursor here, when Lurker Contains come, it's so hard to push out of this. I'm not saying that, you know, every map has to be perfectly balanced, but that's been a challenge I've faced on the map. But I do think overall Deja Vu is made for some interesting games here. And I definitely welcome it. It's a map where you just get 3 bases per starting location. Again, 4-player map, by the way. But just 3 bases. After that, you're moving into another quadrant or you're moving into the center. And Artosis has mentioned this in cast, but I also agree with him. I kind of like that they're introducing some maps where there's only like 12 bases. I guess in the center there are a couple patches here, but I think you guys get what I'm saying. Some maps you can have more, some maps you can have less, but sometimes it's great to kind of keep it simple and kind of force the game in a certain direction by inhibiting the number of bases that you can take. So, very cool. Thank you guys for watching this video. If you're on YouTube, please be sure to like and subscribe. Check out my merch shop at tastelessthreads.com. You can always join me on my Twitch stream where I record this live at twitch.tv/tastelesstv. And as far as SSL next year, probably between Q1 and Q2 of next year, if I had to guess. We never know for sure, and a lot of times they send me the schedule in advance, and then they change it. But I'm looking forward to that. I think StarCraft 1's in a great shape. Over the holidays, I was going to PC cafes a decent amount with some friends, and every time you walk in there, there's always a couple people playing StarCraft 1, and a lot of them are young. A lot of them are very young. So there's a whole new generation of people that are learning. StarCraft 1 still performing extremely well as far as viewership with live streams. I think it's the number 1 or number 2 biggest game on Soup, which was formerly known as Afrika TV. The tournaments do well. A lot of views on the independent YouTube channels that make content around it. So the future's looking good. Anyways, guys, thank you for watching. Stay safe out there. I'll see you in a future video.